So hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on preparing a sheet of ice. We are here in Mississauga, Ontario, at the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. Three guests joining us today. We have Mike Merklinger, who is supporting our education program in the ice tech. And we also have Scott Foster and Bek Duck here as well, who will be helping us out. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat function. We had a bunch of great questions submitted in advance, so we will get to those here shortly. And I'm just going to switch over to my iPad, and we are going to start with a bit of a demonstration. So just give us 1 second here. Okay, can everybody see and hear us okay? If you can give another thumbs up would be great. You may need to switch the camera view or slide over so you can see or make this video full screen on yours. So you can see that if you're on a computer in the top right-hand corner to change your view so you can see the sheet of ice big. I see lots of thumbs up, which is great. So yes, we are here with Bek, Mike, and Scott, and I will let Mike take it away.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Scotties in Mississauga. I've got Scott Foster here, Bek Duck, helping the sheet. And today we're going to talk about preparing a sheet for competition or for your curling club after the final flood stage. So we're on day 5 of our install here in Mississauga. Final flood's done. We had 5 floods in total. And we're just into the breaking in period, breaking in the ice, pebbling, scraping. So Bek is doing a double pebble. She's got a 73 pebble head on there. We did a little bit of scraping and pebbling yesterday. So probably 2 or 3 yesterday. We're going to do probably 6, 7, 8 in total before the ice is good for competition or for play. It came out pretty flat from our final flood. So we started off with a bigger head, 71, to fill in some holes, but we've moved to a 73. We're pretty happy with this. We're happy with the blade. And we're going to do a scrape right now. Scott, if you want to, I've got this blanket on the blade. It's a warm building. Keeps the blade cold. So I always like to start with a, on a first scrape after a flood, double middle, a 3-pass with a double middle, the opposite direction. So that's what we're going to do here. Again, we used this blade yesterday. I know it's good. I really like it. And I've got the tension on the blade set. So go ahead, Scott. We're just going to sweep this off. So again, for me, this is my go-to scrape to start, just to test a new blade to make sure I like the way the blade is cutting. That second pass straight up the middle really shows you what's going on with the blade. Yeah, it's got a really nice roll. Great blade from Eye on the Blade. So Scott's going to do his left turn around the hack. I call this a clockwise. Some people call it a right turn. Now we're going up the side. I'm going to sweep this snow off here. Have a look at this. It's really straight. It's just tickling the overlap. The overlap of pebble is right here. So you can see where it's just tickling here. And this is all fresh pebble here. So again, it's got a nice roll to it. So Scott's going to make his turn, and we're going to go down the other side. And I get a question a lot, like what kind of patterns do I do after my final flood? So if Dustin, you go over there, I'm going to sweep this snow off. What kind of patterns do I do to break in a sheet of ice to get it ready to curl on? Well, I always start with this, a 3 pass or a 3 with an extra center pass, which is a 4. And then 3-4-3-6 is usually a pattern I follow to get your lows filled in and get your sheet playable. And again, some final floods turn out better than others. This was really good, really flat. We didn't have to use a big 68 pebble head for very long because there weren't holes that big. So Scott's going to go in front of the hack. So Dustin, just stay here with me. Okay, here we go, back up the middle. So again, I'm going to sweep this off. You have to sweep this off. You have to have somebody driving the machine for you. Again, I've thought that this side of the blade, the left side's slightly sharper. Yesterday, that's what I thought, and that would explain why this is cutting a little bit less from here out. But I'm not too worried about that right now. We could fix that pretty easily with one swipe of a honing stone or sandpaper from here out, say with 600 grit paper. So he's going to finish off here. And Bek is going to pebble. Once we get the snow cleaned up. So let's step off the sheet. So you just stay there, Scott. So push that right into the foam. And then come off the sheet.
I see Greg Awasco, our chief national ice technician, has joined the call. So I know Greg's traveling to Cortina, Italy for the Winter Olympics. Unfortunately, he is traveling today, so not able to join us on camera. But thank you for tuning in here today, everyone.
Yeah, just step out of the way there, Dustin. It's okay, don't worry about that. Yeah. Nice. So here we go. We're using a 73 pebble head again. If this was really patchy and had some big holes in it, I'd go with something bigger. I'd go with a 68 if I had to, a 70. But after those first couple scrapes yesterday, we're going to stick with a 73 or even a 74. So we're going to do a 4 pass now. Again, I change my patterns 3-4-3-6 typically to break in a sheet of ice and alternate directions every time. That's very important. So Dustin, come out here. So this is a 3-hole angled out, and then the outside pass is going to be angled in. Scott's going to go in a counterclockwise direction. I say counterclockwise, clockwise. Again, other people say left, right, turn, or side. But again, I really like this blade. We're going to see what the overlap looks like when Scott turns. Yeah. So again, I think this blade, like I said earlier, a little sharper on the side and maybe slightly under tension. You can see where that edge of the blade on the first pass was cutting in here. So I'm going to ask Scott to stop. And I'm just going to add a slight bit of tension. I don't want to add too much. Very important. Everybody has one of these on their scraper at their clubs. it's a very important tool to have, and you really shouldn't be scraping without one. So
Mike, we're getting some questions about where do you get the blade tensioner and how to use it.
so just quickly, so you can see I added a bit of tension. It's a little better, but I'm not going to overdo this because I think I just cut in too much on that first pass without the right tension on it. This one here, this tensioner I get from Ice Master. So I get those from Ice Master, the same company that I get my pebble heads from, the same company that builds these machines. So this looks really good. And again, because this is such a new sheet of ice, I know for a fact that it's low out here. Basically, from the 2.5 hole on this machine from here out, it's low, and that's pretty normal with curling ice after your final flood, especially in arenas here. You can still see the pebble along the edge; it's not even being touched by the blade. So again, the overlap of pebble, is from here out. So from here to here, from the foam to here is fresh pebble, and then this is your overlap here. Canada Curling Stone, that's the other company that sells these tensioners. They're slightly different, but they work just as well. Okay, so we're gonna park this and let Beck do another double pebble, another double 73 once we get the snow cleaned up. Okay, so Kevin, just watch behind you.
Yeah.
So just stop at the hack, Beck. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, opposite of the direction you just went. Uh, clockwise. Do a 3-1. 1-6 pass. Yeah, angle in.
Mike, tell us how install's been going here so far.
Install's really smooth. Yeah, we haven't had any issues. We've had lots of time. We came into a nice flat building here, a nice flat pad of ice. So, 5 floods and we were done. Sometimes you have to come in and really do a lot of leveling with the Zamboni, but not here. So we're gonna do a 6 pass now. I'd normally do a 3 pass in between, between my 4 pass and my 6 pass, but we're just gonna go right into a 6 here, just so you guys can see. So again, most of the time we're working from the center out with our scraping, the inside pattern first and then finish off on the outside. Occasionally at a curling club, I'll do the opposite. Sometimes I'll do an outside pass first, but 90% of the time we're scraping like this. And the patterns we do here, again, are very similar to the patterns that I would do at home. So it's coming around. So we're going to do a 3-hole. I'm going to sweep this off. So again, I really like this. This is where the overlap starts right here. And that's absolutely perfect. And where it's fluffier out here, That's just your fresh pebble that hasn't been cut yet. And then this is the overlap from the first pass. So Scott's going to do a 3-hole, 1-hole outside 6-pass, and he's going to alternate the angle with each pass. He's angled in right now. When he goes around the hack, he's going to change the angle on the 1-hole. So let's stop here. So again, I really like this blade. We'll see a little spot here, and maybe that's from the edge of the blade on the 3-hole from this side. Uh, Again, this ice is also brand new, so it's not 100% flat yet. It's still patchy. There's going to be highs and lows still. Eventually, this is going to be perfectly flat, and it's just going to be a perfect roll across. At these events, we have the luxury of having a lot of blades. So I have 7 other blades that I can try out. And more than likely, I'm going to put another one on here this afternoon and test a couple different blades. And these are the 2 suspect spots from yesterday. Little sharp spot on the 5-hole and a little sharper on that left side of the blade. But overall, not bad, and we can work with that for now. So last pass, we're going to go around the outside. So the entire install, we use 2 sets of tanks, 2 sets of jet ice deionized tanks. And once the install was finished, we put on a fresh set of tanks, 1 single set. So we're on our 3rd set of tanks. TDS is 0, water's perfect, pH is perfect. So yeah, really good water here. Yeah, so this is going to be our last pass and our last pattern. So I think we can do some questions after this, Dustin.
Yes.
And I did hone the blade yesterday, just 1 swipe right across the top of the blade. And I use 400 grit sandpaper. And I'm probably going to do that again before we continue scraping for this afternoon. 2 passes across the top with 400, just to keep this blade sharp. So he's going to go right in front, sweep this off, and we're going to finish right here.
Perfect. Okay, give us 30 seconds here and we will reset for some questions. So while you're waiting, please put some questions into the chat. Hey everyone, can you all hear us again? Perfect. So you might need to switch your view here as I've switched back to my laptop here. So you might have to change in the top right your view so you can see. Okay, so we're gonna get started with some questions. So my first question and kind of the first topic we have on here is on water, air and ice temperature and environment. And I can see there's some questions already coming in. The first the first submitted the first submitted question was um, what is the ideal ice temperature and air temperature?
If I had to pick one temperature to have all the time at my club, about 24, maybe 24 and a half Fahrenheit. Um, with air around 42. 40 to 45 is a good range for air temperature in your club.
Perfect. Okay, next question. Should clubs be using jet ice for pebbling?
Yes, you should be using jet ice. There's different there's deionized jet ice and there's reverse osmosis jet ice that you can use, or a combination of both. I'd always recommend using deionized after RO if that's what you're using.
Should all scraping patterns be done inside out?
Starting from the inside, working towards the outside. 90% of the time, I say I would do that. Uh, but I always throw outside passes in, and that's something I've been doing the last few years is doing extra outside passes because a lot of you might know that it's really easy to get a dish sheet of ice in your club, really high sides, especially if you have divider boards. So doing an extra outside pass or occasionally starting from the outside is not a bad idea.
What can cause an uneven ice surface behind the back line, the area where they turn their ice scraper to change directions back down the sheet? Your thoughts and advice.
There's a few things. I mean, if you're doing a lot of say torching, like tiger torching behind your hacks or around your hacks, it can get uneven. And when you make your turn with your scraper, it'll grab your blade. If you don't have removable hacks or you're not taking them out enough, you can get a buildup of pebble around your hacks or in behind, which is going to cause it to be uneven and grab your blade. And sometimes the flood just doesn't freeze evenly or properly back there. I've had that happen to me, and I fight with that until I do my next flood.
How do you adjust your scrape pattern for a club versus competition ice?
Um, we do a lot of the same patterns. Again, I use a lot of these same patterns I do in an arena at my club. But like I was saying, 2 questions ago, I do extra outsides to keep my sides down. If I just did these 4 passes, 6 passes every time, you would get high sides really fast. So just do extra outsides and sometimes start from the outside just to switch it up.
When choosing scrape patterns, is it best practice to generally do them sequentially, example, 3 pass, 4 pass, etc., or randomly? And if sequentially, would you do, for instance, a 3 pass clockwise, then a 3 pass counterclockwise, or move on to a 4 pass after the first one?
Again, I typically stick with my formula, which I've learned from ice makers that I've worked with over the years, and that's a 3-4-3-6, and I follow that pattern uh, most of the time. Start with a 3 pass, then a 4 pass, back to a 3 pass, then a 6 pass, and then start from the beginning again. Sometimes on those 3 passes, I'm gonna add an extra pass in, like an edge of the blade on the center line to check my 8 foots, or maybe an extra center pass on top of the first one to check my centers. And always reverse your direction, clockwise, counterclockwise.
So we'll move on to pebbling. How much does the temperature of the pebbling water really make in how well the rocks curl and how long the pebble lasts?
I mean, I think a lot of the curl is in the rocks. I've done events, all cold water events with cold base, hot top. Um, and if I think if the rocks have the curl in them, they're going to curl, whether it's hot or cold or lukewarm. And same with the water holding up. If you're using good, filtered jet ice water, it's going to hold up no matter what temperature is.
Recommended type of pebbling head to use for a non-arena ice sheet.
I use the same ones. I use the ones from Ice Master, the copper heads. Your typical sizes, 76, 75, 74. The only difference is the number of holes. Sometimes in a curling club, I find a 54 hole head is going to work, well for some people, especially if you're pebbling slow, if you're say over 45 seconds from backline to backline. If you're pebbling a minute end to end, I would recommend a 54 hole for sure. I typically pebble 35, 40 seconds end to end in a club. And I can use a 64 hole comfortably, but some people can.
Assuming the ice technician has good water, what is the most important factor in getting tall or diamond-shaped pebble?
Nice flat ice, scrape your ice flat. And to do that, you need sharp blades. Obviously, we have the luxury of having sharp blades. As soon as one gets dull or starts to get dull, we're going to throw a new one on and keep all that pebble off. So keep the pebble buildup down and yeah, keep your water quality as good as you can get, and you'll have that tall standing pebble.
Should you pebble prior to scraping after a fresh flood?
Yes, I always put some pebble down before I do my first pattern. I there you can I have I shouldn't say I never have, but I've scraped just bare ice. More so in a curling club, I'll do that if I know my water's not perfect. I just want to get rid of some of the scum off the surface. I'll do what I call a dry scrape with no pebble and just get rid of some of the impurities before I, start locking them down with a big pebble head.
We'll move on to clipping next. So nipping with a scraper versus an actual nipper.
Most of us have nippers in our clubs. I use nippers at all of the clubs that I work with. Um, Nippers are really easy to use. You just set them and you keep it there. The difference is with a scraper, you can really fine tune it. You can adjust it really easily. Anyone that's ever tried to adjust a nipper, it's a little time consuming with the 3 or 4 separate blades on them, and trying to get them all cutting evenly. So to try to do that, in between draws is not realistic. So that's the one advantage with clipping with a scraper is that you can really, really dial in the amount that you want to take off.
What pattern should you nip and how many times?
Either a 2 or 3 pass. At one club, anytime after a scrape, we do a 3 pass with a nipper. I have a small nipper, the 5 foot, 3 blades. So a 3 pass after a scrape, and then between draw changes, it's a 2 pass.
Next, we'll go on to stones. How they make their ice faster?
In regards to stones, well, the best thing to do is print your running surface first, find out what the width of your running surface is, um, and feel the edge on your rock. Anyone that's listened to Greg Duwasco talk about rocks, he likes to get rid of those edges, and so do I. And so just feel it with your thumb, your fingers on the bottom. And we're not going to get into it too much here, but there's a way to spin the rocks on a soft surface to get rid of those edges and get a nice fast running surface. But start with blueprinting them and finding out how wide they are.
Does nipping and running the rocks achieve the same outcome? And if so, does it make sense to do both?
I think they're two different things. Nipping, you're cutting the pebble off. Running the rocks, you're crushing any of the pebble that hasn't been nipped. So ideally, yes, at an arena during an event, yes, we clip and then we run the rocks on top. I personally don't run rocks at my club. It's too time consuming. You certainly don't have time to do it between games, but even to do it if you're scraping 8 sheets, double pebbling, nipping, and then having to run rocks by yourself, it's really time consuming to do that.
What maintenance can be done to the striking bands? How often do they need to be reconditioned?
As far as maintenance, there's not really anything you can do with your striking bands. You have to send them back to Canada Curling Stone to have them reconditioned. I believe they recommend every 10 years with regular use for a regular curling club. But you can do some maintenance on your running surface, but not on your striking bands.
So next we had some troubleshooting questions we'll move into. How do you correct runs in the ice?
Well, there's a few ways. Pebbling and scraping is probably the most common way. Again, make sure you have a good blade that's true and you know it is for a fact and you trust it. And just pebbling and scraping, doing different patterns. If the runs are that bad in your ice, I mean, I spent a lot of nights when I was early on in my career, when I was younger, trying to fix runs, trying to fix sheets that, were sloped one way. And I found over the years that the easiest thing to do is just flood your ice. Just start fresh with a flat sheet of ice, and you know for a fact that it's flat.
How can they tell if they need to install a blade tensioner, and is tightening it a trial and error thing, much like many other facets of ice making?
You should always install a blade tensioner, whether you need one or not. Always have one on your blade ready. When I put one on with a fresh blade, I put it on and I just tight enough that it's not going to fall off. So there's zero tension on it. But the second you need tension, you can just add it on the fly. So I recommend everybody have one on their blade.
Okay, so I think that's all for the submitted questions. I don't know if we were able to get to all of the submitted questions, but I see we have a bunch of great ones in the chat. So I'm just going to go back here to some of the starting ones. Lots of good questions here. So should ice technicians always be shooting for 0 TDS because they have 4 TDS on their cold line right now?
Yeah, I mean, we all want to have zero TDS, but four is okay. I wouldn't worry too much about four, um, especially if it stays there. If it's staying, 3, 4, and it's not moving up on you, you could use that for a while. I would recommend, still trying to get that back down to zero, and maybe you need a 20-inch mixed bed deionized cartridge on there just to bring it down. That would be my recommendation.
Are blade tensioners universal or brand of scraper specific?
They're universal. The only two that I know of are the ones I talked about during the video, which was Ice Master, which is a cable style tensioner, and Canada Curling Stone has a completely different style, but just as effective and does the same thing. It adjusts on two sides rather than the one in the middle.
How can they tell the difference between a blade being too sharp or if it needs tension?
A blade being too sharp, I mean, we don't typically get that issue too much. I mean, if a blade's too sharp, it might dig on you a lot. But you can usually get through that. And once you start scraping, it shouldn't be digging on you that much. And if it is, it might be an issue with the actual sharpening or the grind of it. Um, but a well-sharpened blade from one of the manufacturers that do the sharpening, you shouldn't have an issue with it being too sharp. I don't have that problem.
Can you explain reading the overlap and knowing when you move in or out for the next scrape?
It's all about alternating your patterns, and we showed the overlap a little bit during those 3 patterns that we did. And when you have that freshly scraped pass versus the pass beside it with the fresh pebble, it's a fluffier pebble versus the overlap is it's almost like a roll. And yeah, so it's just alternating your patterns, 4 passes, 6 passes, threes, fives.
When you angle the blade left or right during your patterns, do you always angle the blade as far as it will go, or do you vary the amount of left or right angle?
No, I personally don't angle it as far. Some machines angle farther one way than the other, so it might angle really far to the right and not so much to the right or the left. And then I just kind of gauge it on a 45-degree angle and go with that. And if you're not all the way or it's not quite a 45, that's it's just about changing it up and alternating your directions, alternating your angles. I do a lot of straight blade passes as well.
Do you only hone with passes on the top of the blade?
Yes, I recommend only going across the top. The only time I go on the bottom is if I'm like actually trying to dull the blade, like if I think there's a sharp spot. So maybe on the left side of that blade, I might put a piece of 600 paper on the bottom side and very carefully follow the bevel, the back grind, and just a swipe to try to get a sharp spot off. But if I'm trying to sharpen the blade, stay on top of the blade for sure.
Do you routinely use check passes?
I do a lot of check passes, yeah. So I'll typically do a 3 pass, like or a 4 pass, and then do an extra pass on top of that. And my check passes are typically a straight blade. So I'll put the edge of the blade on the center line, and just go up, and that'll show you if you have a high 8 foot, a low 8 foot, or maybe your 12 foots are starting to get high and the blade's digging into your 12 foot. So yes, I do a lot of check passes, but I do my pattern first and then check passes on top.
We have a problem with outside by the boards getting stones dropping off or not curling much instead of curling properly. So maybe any advice on creating a flat sheet of ice, which is the
Is it
aim
an
for every sheet?
is it an outside like a wall sheets? I mean, those typically are the ones that get that problem. A wall sheet will typically get lower, and the biggest reason for that I tell a lot of people is it's not getting the overlap from the sheet beside it. That's to me, that's the biggest reason. There are other reasons, like it could be airflow, it could be a warm wall, but most of the time, I think it's just from that sheet not getting the overlap of pebble from the sheet beside it. Here, it's a lot easier. We have 4 foot walks between the sheets, so the sheets stay fairly flat and fairly consistent. But as soon as you put a sheet of ice beside that, even if there's a divider board, um, you're going to get high sides on that side for sure, and lower um, where there's no overlap. And I mean, there's ways of fixing that, building it up with extra pebbles, side pebbling that outside sheet, taking turns off with your scraper on not all the time, but every, second or third scrape for a while until you've built that side back up again. But it's a common problem.
That led in well to the next question. Scrape flat, question mark, flat, flat, question mark. The concern is of going in too deep.
Uh, how much pebble would take off, I think is what they're getting at. Yeah, I mean, we try to scrape as flat as we can. I like to see just a very little bit of a shadow of the old pebble left. Other people like to have it completely bald and just nothing at all, sheet of glass. I like to leave a little bit more than that. I, I find at our clubs it's very, very hard to get that flat. Again, because we don't have that many blades. Like some clubs only have two, three, four blades to get through the entire season, and you're trying to stretch them out as long as you can. Some people will keep a blade on for 2 months, and here we have the luxury. If we don't like one after 2 days, we can put a new one on and get through.
The next one, what is the recommended ice level temperature?
Ice level or ice surface.
Yeah, I think it might be ice surface temperature.
We talked about that earlier, and I say the magic number, if I had to pick one number to have all the time in my club, it'd be 24, 24 and a half degrees Fahrenheit, depending on your, on other conditions.
If you don't see any difference in snow with the overlap sections, what is the problem? How do you correct it?
Any difference in the snow on the overlap section? I mean, the overlap should just be a nice even roll from wherever the overlaps start to the edge of the blade. If you're seeing zero snow at all, if it's nothing, then maybe your blade's over tensioned, or maybe you cut it too sharp on the first pass. But you should always see some snow on your overlap. There should always be even just a tickle of snow.
So John's wondering, by measuring it by weight, what is the best way to gauge your scrape besides watching the blade cut? Example, how much snow is removed after all sheets are scraped?
The amount of snow from the scrape or the amount of snow from the clip?
I think from the scrape, snow from the scrape.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Both, yeah, sorry, maybe by nip.
By nip.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of snow you're
Scrape.
taking off, by scrape. Well, it depends. I've never actually, measured that. It's, if you have a garbage pail at your club and that's where you're using to collect snow, that, 4 sheets fills up 2 full garbage cans of snow. Um, Again, I just scrape until it's flat and fill up my buckets and that's how I gauge it or measure it.
Okay, before we get to some closing thoughts, if you are a coach on the call and have an NCCP number, you can put your NCCP number into the chat here now, along with any future webinar ideas that you have. But yeah, I see there's maybe a couple more questions. What is the floor set at to scrape?
The floor, as in the temperature.
Yes.
So again, if we're talking surface temperature, it's around 24 Fahrenheit. Right now we're about 24.2 surface. I've got the brine set point at 16 right now, just for an example. That would give us a slab temperature. That's the concrete below the ice, probably 18, 19, with a 24-degree surface.
Do you ever change the ice temperature in order to scrape after a flood or during a normal day and then return it after the scrape?
Yeah, anytime I do a flood, I warm up my ice a bit. I want to get maybe that 25, 26 degree surface before my flood, and I'll typically keep it there overnight, after the flood's frozen, and do my initial scraping on the warmer ice. It's a lot easier to cut your ice. It's softer, right? So it'll just cut easier. Really hard ice can be difficult to cut, and it's hard on your blade. So I keep mine warm.
Should there be one or two tensioners on the blade?
One tensioner, single tensioner.
Is snow melt okay to use for pebbling?
No, no, absolutely not. If you've ever looked at a melted snow, it's really dirty. There's a lot of contaminants in the snow.
If the amount of snow on the blade is the same across the blade for the overlap section and new section, how do you correct that?
It's difficult to kind of visualize that, but I mean, the overlap the overlap on the blade where it's already been cut should look different than the fresh pebble. The fresh pebble is always going to be a fluffy, bigger pile of snow versus a smaller overlap. They might both have a nice roll to them, but the overlap's always going to be smaller because there's less pebble there that you're cutting off.
What is the pitch of the blade ideally if you measure from the surface of the ice to the bottom of the blade at the back?
That's a good question. It changes from blade to blade depending on, where it's been sharpened, how much steel is left on the blade. Some blades have, a couple inches of steel versus a new blade. There's quite a bit of steel on there, so that's going to change the pitch. There's an old thing that people say, well, if your thumb can fit under the back of the blade, the heel of the blade, then that's starting to get too high. But I mean that I don't believe that either. It's you just go, when your blade starts to get dull and snow might start coming underneath. If your blade's cutting really good and it's getting all that pebble off and it's nice and sharp and you're maintaining it with honing, which is also important, it should last you a while.
Slab temperature of 18 to 20, supply or return temperature.
Slab temperature of 18 to 20. So your brine return would typically be a couple degrees lower than a slab temperature. Yeah, so if your slab's 18, I mean, you might have a brine return temperature of 17 even.
Okay.
They're usually very close, slab and brine return.
Do you always pebble before you scrape?
Rarely, hardly ever. It's not something I would typically do. Certainly not in my curling club, because like a lot of us, it's a constant struggle to get the old pebble off. So to me, if you're adding pebble to pebble that's 3 draws, that's been there from the night before, then it's sitting all night getting hard, and then you go in the morning and you add more pebble to it, you're never going to get it off. So I rarely do that. The only time I would pebble before scraping would be if I had a serious frost issue.
Okay, so I think that's all we have time for. I think we have to be a little bit shorter on this webinar just due to setup here taking place as we have TSN and some additional setup taking place. So yeah, thank you to everyone for joining, and a special thank you to Mike and Scott and Beck and all the volunteers here in Mississauga. They've been doing an incredible job in installing the ice. So we started Saturday morning and have been putting in some long days to get it all prepared. And thank you to all the ice technicians for all the work you're doing this season. And yes, all the best the rest of the season, and hope you tune in to the Scotties that starts Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern time on TSN. So thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you on the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone.